The day my husband died, I didn't just lose him. I lost the version of myself that believed life would always be fair. Have you ever had a morning that seemed perfectly ordinary, until it became the last normal morning of your entire life? That morning began like any other Thursday in late October. The rain had tapped against the kitchen window in that soft, rhythmic way only London rain can. Gentle, persistent, like the city itself was trying to tell me something I wasn't ready to hear. Michael was still half asleep on the sofa, coffee mug balanced dangerously close to his laptop. I can still see him there if I close my eyes. The way his reading glasses sat crooked on his nose, the way his fingers hovered over the keyboard even in sleep, as if his dreams were full of emails and property listings. I remember laughing and telling him he'd spill it, and he mumbled, "Then you'll have a reason to clean the rug you hate so much." We'd been married 7 years. Teasing was our language. The way we said, "I love you," without making it heavy, without acknowledging how fragile happiness really is. I used to believe the world made sense in small domestic ways. Morning coffee with 2 sugars for him, 1 for me. The school run through Peckham's narrow streets, dodging buses and cyclists. The warmth of his voice calling up the stairs, "We're late, love," even though we both knew I was the punctual one. If someone had told me that by evening he'd be gone, I would have thought they were cruel. But life doesn't ask for your permission before it changes everything, does it? Let me take you back to where it all began. Because to understand what I lost, you need to understand what we built. We met 8 years ago at a small cafe near Brixton Station. The kind of place Londoners walk past 1,000 times without noticing. It was called Morley's Corner, tucked between a chicken shop and a newsagent that sold everything from lottery tickets to knockoff perfume. I'd just finished a shift at Waterstones on Cold Harbour Lane. My feet ached, my hair was a mess from the October wind, and all I wanted was a cup of builder's tea and 20 minutes of silence before catching the 345 bus home to my tiny flat in Camberwell. He was behind me in the queue. Tall, well over 6 feet, with a tidy beard that looked like he actually cared about grooming, unlike half the men I'd dated who thought a shower counted as effort. He wore a charcoal wool coat and carried a leather messenger bag, the kind young professionals carry when they're trying to look established but can't quite afford the image yet. I noticed him because he smelled like sandalwood and ambition. When the card machine refused my payment, I felt that familiar flush of embarrassment creep up my neck. You know that feeling, when everyone behind you is suddenly aware of your existence and not in a good way? I tried twice. Declined. Then he stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "I'll get it. It's only tea." I refused, obviously. Pride and poverty are close cousins. But he smiled. Not the predatory smile some men wear when they sense vulnerability, but something genuine, something warm, and said, "Then let me at least pay for your time while you argue with the machine." Have you ever met someone and immediately felt like you'd known them in another life? We ended up sitting at the same table, him with his black Americano, me with my tea that was probably more milk than anything else. 1 hour became 3. The cafe filled and emptied around us. Someone knocked over a sugar dispenser. A group of teenagers argued about football. The barista changed the music from jazz to something with too much bass. And through it all we talked. I was laughing before I realized I'd told him more about myself than I'd told anyone in years. He was working in property management back then for a mid-sized firm in Southwark. Smart but humble, the kind of man who could talk about rental yields and interest rates without making you feel stupid for not understanding. We both loved late-night walks along the South Bank, sharing chips out of one carton while the city lights reflected in the Thames like fallen stars. We'd walk from Waterloo Bridge all the way to Tower Bridge sometimes, talking about everything and nothing. Books, childhood, the absurdity of London rent prices, what we'd do if we ever had real money. The first time he held my hand, we were standing near the Tate Modern watching a street performer juggle fire. He said, "You feel like home." 3 words. I never forgot them. Because when you've spent your whole life feeling like a visitor in other people's spaces, being someone's home changes everything. Our wedding was small. Just 37 people crammed into a community hall in Peckham on a rainy Saturday in May. We didn't have much money. I was still working at the bookstore. He just started his own small property consultancy with a friend from university, operating out of a cramped office above a barber shop on Rye Lane. But we had joy. And that was enough. I wore a cream dress I'd found in a vintage shop in Shoreditch for £85. My best friend Tara did my makeup in the tiny bathroom while my mother fussed over my hair, muttering in Yoruba about how I should have let her hire a proper stylist. Michael wore a navy suit he'd owned since graduation. It fit him perfectly because he was the kind of man who took care of things. Clothes, promises, people. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves. Mine were careful, poetic. I'd spent weeks trying to capture what I felt. His were simple, direct, devastating in their honesty. Rekil, I don't have much. But everything I build from this day forward, I build with you. You're not just my wife. You're my partner. My home. My reason. When was the last time someone looked at you like you were their entire future? The reception was loud and chaotic. Someone's cousin brought too much jollof rice. The DJ played the wrong first dance song. My uncle got drunk and tried to give a speech in 3 different languages. It was perfect. Because love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, messy, imperfect, real, and choosing each other anyway. We spent our wedding night in a modest hotel near Gatwick Airport before flying to Barcelona for a 4-day honeymoon we'd saved for over 18 months. We walked through Gothic Quarter holding hands like teenagers, ate paella on the beach, stayed up too late drinking wine and making promises about the life we'd build. He always said we'd build something solid for the kids. And somehow we did. The first 3 years of marriage were hard in the way young marriages often are. Not because we didn't love each other, but because London doesn't care about love when rent is due. We lived in a cramped 1-bedroom flat in Camberwell where the heating barely worked and the neighbors upstairs seemed to move furniture at 2 a.m. every single night. But Michael was relentless in the best way. He worked 60-hour weeks, building his consultancy client by client. I picked up extra shifts, working evenings at a small art gallery in Shoreditch on top of my bookstore job. We saved every spare pound. Skipped holidays. Ate more pasta than any 2 people should. Walked instead of taking the tube. Made coffee at home and pretended we preferred it. 3 years in, we bought our first property. A modest semi-detached house in Peckham, tucked on a quiet street near Peckham Rye Park. Nothing extravagant. 3 bedrooms, a small garden with overgrown hedges, a kitchen that needed updating. But it was ours. Every brick, every squeaky floorboard, every crack in the ceiling we promised we'd fix someday. I cried the day we got the keys. Not sad tears, relieved tears. The kind you cry when you finally stop running and realize you found a place to rest. Michael carried me over the threshold even though I told him it was ridiculous and we were too old for that. He laughed and said, "We're never too old to be ridiculous. Do you remember the first time something felt truly yours? Not borrowed, not rented, yours?" 2 years later, we bought our first rental property, a small flat near Surrey Quays. It wasn't much, but the rental income helped cover our mortgage and gave us breathing room we'd never had. Then came the children. Ethan arrived first on a freezing January morning after 18 hours of labor that nearly broke me. He was thoughtful from the beginning. Our serious one, always asking questions too big for his age. At 3 he asked why the sky changed colors. At 5 he wanted to know where people went when they died. I should have known then that life would test us with that question sooner than any of us were ready. Noah came 2 years later. Our wild one, the cheeky boy who made us laugh until we cried and occasionally made us want to cry for entirely different reasons. He climbed everything, broke things accidentally, hugged too hard, loved too loud. Where Ethan thought before he moved, Noah moved before he thought. And then little Ava. Our surprise. Our tiny shadow who loved to crawl into our bed at sunrise, all warm skin and tangled curls, whispering, "Mummy, is it morning yet?" Even though she could clearly see the sun streaming through the curtains. Life was noisy, messy, exhausting, perfect. Our house smelled like baby powder and burnt toast. There were toys in every corner, crayon marks on the walls we kept meaning to paint over, school permission slips stuck to the fridge with alphabet magnets. Michael would come home from work, loosen his tie, and immediately be tackled by all 3 of them, his briefcase forgotten in the hallway. We'd have dinner together every night, his rule, not mine. Family sits together, he'd say. Even when work was chaos, even when the kids were impossible, even when we were both too tired to speak. We sat together. When did family dinner stop being normal? When did we decide we were too busy for the people we love most? Sunday mornings were sacred. We'd walk to Peckham Rye Park, the 5 of us, letting the kids run ahead while we stole moments of adult conversation. Sometimes we'd stop at the cafe by the pond, buying pastries and letting Ava feed the ducks even though the signs clearly said not to. Those mornings felt like forever. But forever is a lie we tell ourselves to survive the present. That Thursday started like I said, ordinary, unremarkable, safe. But the truth is the warning signs had been there for weeks. I just didn't want to see them. Michael had been coughing for nearly a month. Nothing alarming at first, just the cold that everyone in London seemed to have that winter. The kind of cough that makes you reach for cough sweets and promise yourself you'll book a doctor's appointment, if it gets worse. But it did get worse. The night before, Wednesday, October 22nd, he looked pale. Not tired pale. Sick pale. The sparkle that usually lived in his dark brown eyes had dimmed to something flat and distant. "I'll call the GP tomorrow," I told him, worry creeping into my voice. "It's just a cold, Rakhil," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. That night I woke to the sound of his breathing, labored, struggling, wrong. "Michael." I shook him gently. "Michael, wake up." His skin was hot but clammy. His eyes opened but didn't quite focus. "Can't breathe properly," he managed. I called 999. The woman on the other end was calm, professional, asking questions I could barely answer through my panic. Address. Symptoms. Medical history. An ambulance is on its way. Stay with him. Keep him comfortable. Comfortable. What a useless word. I woke the children, bundled them into coats over their pajamas, called my neighbor Mrs. Donnelly to come sit with them. She arrived in her dressing gown, eyes wide with concern, asking no questions, just pulling my babies close while I grabbed my phone, my keys, nothing else that mattered. The ambulance came quickly, blue lights flashing against the drizzle, turning our quiet street into a scene from someone else's nightmare. 2 paramedics, a young woman with kind eyes and an older man who moved with practiced efficiency, assessed Michael quickly. Oxygen mask. Blood pressure cuff. Questions delivered in calm voices designed not to panic. But I was already panicking. They loaded him onto the stretcher. I followed behind in our car, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel, heart racing, repeating his name under my breath like a prayer that could keep him alive. Michael. 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 As if saying it enough times would anchor him to this world. King's College Hospital. Accident and emergency entrance. Fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly and surreal. I parked badly, half on the curb, hazard lights still flashing, and ran inside. They'd already taken him through. A nurse with a Caribbean accent and exhausted eyes directed me to the waiting area. "Someone will update you soon, love." What does soon mean when every second feels like drowning? I sat in a plastic chair that was somehow both hard and sticky. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. A drunk man argued with security. A mother held a crying toddler. A teenager scrolled his phone with one arm in a makeshift sling. Normal Thursday emergencies. Except mine wasn't normal. Mine was ending. I called Mrs. Donnelly. "Are the kids okay?" "They're fine, darling. Watching cartoons." "You just focus on Michael." Focus. As if I could focus on anything else. 40 minutes passed. Maybe longer. Time moved strangely, simultaneously frozen and racing. Then a doctor appeared. Young, Indian, pretty, wearing scrubs that looked too clean for someone delivering bad news. "Mrs. Michael?" I stood. My legs barely held me. "Your husband went into cardiac arrest. We did everything we could, but the rest disappeared into white noise." I heard words. Resuscitation. Complications. Time of death. "So sorry. But they weren't real. They couldn't be real. Because an hour ago he was on our sofa complaining about spilling coffee. How do you explain to your brain that the person you woke up next to is just gone?" They let me see him. He looked like he was sleeping. Peaceful almost, except for the pallor, the absolute stillness that bodies have when souls leave them. I held his hand. "Still warm. You promised," I whispered. "You promised we'd grow old together. You promised you'd teach Noah to ride a bike. You promised, Michael. But promises don't stop hearts from failing." I don't remember leaving the hospital. I don't remember calling my mother. I don't remember the drive home through streets that looked exactly the same as they had 3 hours earlier, even though my entire world had ended. I only remember walking into my house, seeing Mrs. Donnelly's pitying face and hearing Ethan ask, "Mummy, is Daddy coming home?" and having to say the word that would break all of us. "No, baby. No, he's not." Grief is such a strange thing. It doesn't arrive all at once like they show in movies. No dramatic collapse, no single moment of breaking. It creeps in through the cracks. One moment you're numb, moving through tasks like a robot. calling relatives, choosing coffins, signing forms, and having to say the word that would break all of us. No, baby. No, he's not. Grief is such a strange thing. It doesn't arrive all at once like they show in movies. No dramatic collapse, no single moment of breaking. Creeps in through the cracks. One moment you're numb, moving through tasks like a robot, calling relatives, choosing coffins, signing forms. The next, you're screaming at the ceiling because the world keeps turning while yours has stopped. The funeral was held 8 days later at St. Giles Church in Camberwell, a beautiful old building with stained glass windows that cast colored shadows across the pews. It was packed. His family filled the church. Siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, relatives I'd only met once at our wedding. His work colleagues, neighbors, friends from university, people whose names I couldn't remember but whose grief seemed genuine. Everyone kept touching me, hands on my shoulders, arms around my waist, cheeks pressed to mine. He was such a good man. You're so strong, Rakhil. He's in a better place. At least you have the children. Why does every sentence of comfort start with, at least? As if gratitude could erase grief? I wore black. Obviously. A simple dress my mother had bought because I couldn't bring myself to shop. The children sat beside me in their small black outfits, confused and too quiet. Ethan held my hand the entire service. Noah kept asking when we could go home. Ava didn't understand why Daddy was sleeping in a box. Marcus, Michael's older brother, gave the eulogy. He spoke beautifully about their childhood, about Michael's ambition, his kindness, his love for family. He didn't mention me once. At the time I thought it was grief. Later I'd realize it was something else entirely. The burial was at Nunhead Cemetery, a sprawling Victorian graveyard that felt appropriately gothic for the worst day of my life. Rain threatened but never came. The sky just hung gray and heavy, like it couldn't decide whether to weep with us or let us suffer in dry misery. They lowered the coffin. I threw dirt on top. That sound, earth hitting wood, it's a sound that lives in your body forever. The first week after the funeral, our house overflowed with people. My mother moved in temporarily, cooking endless pots of stew and rice, trying to feed grief like it was hunger. My sister Alicia came from Birmingham every weekend. Tara, my best friend since secondary school, showed up unannounced with wine and tissues and zero judgment when I needed to cry without speaking. The doorbell rang constantly. More flowers. More casseroles. More people who meant well but said the wrong things. You're so strong. I wasn't strong. I was surviving. There's a difference. At least it was quick. At least. There's that phrase again. God has a plan. If God's plan involved leaving 3 children without a father and a widow at 31, I wanted a different God. But you smile. You nod. You thank them for coming. Because that's what widows do. We perform grief in ways that make other people comfortable. Around week 2 something changed. The visits slowed. Which I expected. People have their own lives, their own problems. Grief is exhausting even for spectators. But what replaced the visits were phone calls. Long ones at first. Polite. Concerned. Then gradually they became something else. Something I couldn't quite name but felt in my stomach like a warning. Rakhil, how are you managing the mortgage? Has the rent from the Peckham flat come in this month? Do you know where Michael kept the property deeds? Have you thought about the future? The children's education. We just want to make sure you're okay. You know, financially. At first I thought they were trying to help. Family helping family, right? But help doesn't sound like suspicion. Help doesn't make you feel like you're being audited instead of supported. Have you ever had someone ask you questions disguised as concern, when really they were just taking inventory? The questions always came from Michael's side. His brothers, his sisters, his cousins who'd barely spoken to me before but now seemed deeply invested in our finances. Just making sure you don't lose the house, sweetheart. We know how difficult these things can be for women on their own. Women on their own. As if being a widow erased every other part of me. My intelligence, my capability, my right to exist without a man defining me. I started keeping a notebook. Not because I suspected anything yet, but because I've always been the kind of person who writes things down to make sense of chaos. Every phone call went into that notebook. Who called? What they asked. What they implied. I didn't know then that this notebook would become my evidence. My protection. My proof that I wasn't imagining things. It was a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after the funeral. The children were finally asleep after a bedtime routine that had taken twice as long as usual because Noah kept crying for his father and nothing I said could stop it. I just poured myself a glass of wine, cheap red from Sainsbury's, and sat down for the first moment of silence I'd had all day. Then the doorbell rang. Marcus stood on my doorstep. No warning. No call ahead. "Can I come in?" he asked, though he was already stepping past me into the hallway. Michael's older brother. 43, broad-shouldered, with the same strong jaw as my husband but none of the warmth. He worked in corporate law, wore expensive suits, carried himself like someone who'd never been told no. We sat at the dining table, the same table where Michael and I had shared thousands of meals, made plans, dreamed about the future. Marcus's fingers drummed against the wood. A nervous tick or maybe impatience. "You know we've been thinking," he began, not bothering with small talk. "About the properties." My stomach tightened. "What about them?" He leaned back, studying me like I was a problem he needed to solve. "You're young, Rakhil. 31. You might remarry someday. It's not unreasonable to think about." I blinked. "I'm not thinking about remarrying, Marcus. I'm thinking about how to get through tomorrow without falling apart." He waved a hand dismissively. "Of course. Now yes. But eventually. And when you do." He paused for effect. "We can't have another man benefiting from Michael's sweat. From what our family helped him build." "Your family?" "Marcus," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Michael and I built those properties together. We saved for years. We sacrificed, and we appreciate that," he interrupted smoothly. "But the properties were in his name primarily. And now that he's gone, we need to think about protecting the children's inheritance." "I am thinking about the children. I'm their mother." "Exactly." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're their mother. Not a property manager. Not a financial expert. You're grieving, emotional. You need rest. Let us handle the paperwork until you're in a better state of mind." There was the word that would echo in my head for months. Emotional. As if grief cancelled intelligence. As if sadness made me incompetent. "The children are Michael's blood," Marcus continued, his tone patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "Everything he built should go to them, protected by family who understands these things. You understand that, don't you?" I understood perfectly. He was telling me I didn't belong. That without my husband, I had no claim to the life we'd built. "Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but I can handle things." His jaw tightened. "Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like you're barely holding it together." The cruelty of that sentence sat between us like a living thing. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. He stood, adjusted his coat. "Think about what I said. We only want what's best for the children. We'll talk again soon." After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it until my heartbeat slowed. The house hummed with that eerie quiet you only hear after loss. The sound of everything that used to be. For the first time since Michael died, I felt truly afraid. Not of being alone. Not of grief. But of something far worse. Being erased. That night, after Marcus left, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, searching terms I'd never needed to know before. Widows' rights UK property inheritance without a will. Intestacy rules England. Can family take property from widow? Guardianship of minor children. Every article I opened made my chest tighter. The legal language felt deliberately confusing. Executors, beneficiaries, probate grants, letters of administration. But one thing became horrifyingly clear. If Michael had died without a will, which I suddenly couldn't remember us ever making, our situation was more complicated than I'd imagined. Under intestacy rules, I'd inherit a portion. The children would inherit the rest. But children under 18 couldn't legally hold property, which meant someone had to manage their share until they came of age. Usually, that someone is the surviving parent. Unless someone challenges it. Have you ever realized too late that you didn't protect yourself when you had the chance? At 2 a.m., I found a legal advice forum and typed out my situation with shaking hands. My husband died suddenly 3 weeks ago. We own 2 properties, our home and a rental flat. His family is pressuring me to let them manage everything. What are my rights? What should I do? Responses came quickly. Get a solicitor immediately. Do not sign anything. Document every conversation. Every threat. Every visit. This is more common than you think. They're banking on you not knowing your rights. I'm so sorry for your loss. Please protect yourself. They will take everything if you let them. I read that last one 3 times. They will take everything. The next morning, exhausted and running on 2 hours of sleep, I called the first solicitor I could find who specialized in inheritance disputes. Her name was Rachel Hughes. Her office was in Southwark, above a Turkish restaurant that made the whole building smell like grilled meat and hope. Rachel was in her late 40s, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a practical bun and reading glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. Her office was small but organized, shelves full of legal texts, a desk covered in case files, and a window that overlooked the messy beauty of South London. She offered me tea. I accepted even though I didn't want it because it gave my hand something to hold. "Tell me everything," she said simply. So I did. I told her about Michael. About the properties. About Marcus showing up unannounced. About the phone calls, the questions, the pressure disguised as concern. I told her about feeling like I was drowning, about the children asking questions I couldn't answer, about the fear that kept me awake at night. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in neat handwriting. When I finished, she leaned forward, her expression serious but not unkind. "Rachel, you're not powerless. But you need to act quickly. If they gain control of those properties before probate is granted, it'll be messy. Very messy." What should I do? First, did your husband leave a will? My stomach dropped. I don't think so. We talked about it once years ago, but we never actually. She nodded, unsurprised. Most people don't. It's the thing everyone knows they should do and almost no one does. Which means his estate will be distributed according to intestacy laws. She explained. Under those laws, as his spouse, I'd inherit personal possessions, the first £270,000 of the estate, plus half of anything remaining. The children would inherit the other half. But here's the critical part, Rachel continued. As their mother and legal guardian, you should be the one managing their share until they turn 18. Unless someone successfully argues you're unfit. Unfit. The word stung. It's a high bar to meet. But families try. They'll claim emotional instability, financial incompetence, risk of remarriage, anything to paint you as unsuitable. How many women, I wonder, have been declared unfit simply for grieving publicly? What do I do? I asked again, hearing the desperation in my own voice. You fight, Rachel said simply. We file for letters of administration immediately. That gives you legal authority to manage the estate. We document every interaction with his family. Every call, every visit, every threat. And we make it very clear that any attempt to intimidate or coerce you will be met with legal action. She slid a business card across the desk. This is going to be difficult. Expensive, potentially. But you have rights, Rachel. You just need to claim them. I left her office that afternoon feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope, exactly. But something close. Determination maybe. Or just the faint belief that I didn't have to surrender. Following Rachel's advice, I began gathering every document I could find related to our properties, finances, and marriage. Bank statements going back 7 years. The title deeds to both properties found in Michael's study in a file marked important, do not lose. Mortgage agreements. Rental agreements for the Surrey Quays flat. Life insurance policy, thank God he'd had one. Marriage certificate. Children's birth certificates. Utility bills, council tax documents, proof of address. Every text message, voicemail, and email from Marcus and the family. I created a timeline of events starting from Michael's death. October 23rd, Michael died. October 31st, funeral. November 5th, first call from Marcus asking about finances. November 8th, Marcus's sister called asking about rental income. November 12th, Marcus showed up unannounced, mentioned managing properties. On and on. Each entry a small piece of evidence that this wasn't concern. It was a campaign. The notebook became my Bible. I carried it everywhere, adding to it after every interaction, every phone call, every casual question that wasn't casual at all. That if you've ever had to document your own life to prove you deserve to live it, you'll understand the particular indignity of that process. The phone calls didn't stop. If anything, they increased. Marcus's sister Beverly called one afternoon while I was picking up Ethan from school. Rekhiel, we need to talk about selling the Surrey Keys flat. The rental market's good right now. We should capitalize. Beverly, that flat isn't yours to sell. It's the family's property. Michael would want. Don't tell me what Michael would want, I snapped, surprising both of us. You didn't ask him when he was alive. You don't get to speak for him now. Silence. Then coldly, grief is making you irrational. She hung up. 2 days later, Marcus's younger brother showed up asking for the car keys. The BMW was technically Michael's, he said. Until probate settled, it should stay with family. I am family, I replied, not letting him pass the doorway. You know what I mean. I do. And the answer is no. Someone started a WhatsApp group, Michael's Legacy, with all his siblings and several cousins. I wasn't added to it. I only found out because Tara's husband knew one of the cousins who mentioned it casually. When pressed, he admitted they were discussing how to protect Michael's assets. From me. They were protecting his assets from me. The gaslighting was constant. We're not trying to take anything from you. Why are you being so defensive? We just want to help. You're tearing the family apart. That last one was my favorite. I was tearing the family apart. Not them with their demands and manipulation and casual cruelty. Me for having the audacity to say no. One morning, I'll never forget this. I came downstairs to find Marcus in Michael's study. The door was open. He was inside, crouched in front of the small safe we kept in the closet. The safe was open. What are you doing? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He didn't even look guilty. Didn't even pretend to be embarrassed. Just checking if the insurance papers are in order, he said casually, flipping through documents like he had every right. You broke into my safe? Michael gave me the combination years ago. It's not your safe, Rekhiel. It was his. The correction was deliberate. Wait. Get out, I said quietly. Rekhiel, get out. He stood slowly, papers still in his hand. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I said, get out of my house. He walked past me so close I could smell his cologne, the same brand Michael used to wear. Made my stomach turn. This isn't over, he said from the doorway. No, I agreed. It's not. But I wasn't backing down anymore. After he left, I called a locksmith. Had every lock in the house changed. Had the safe's combination reset. Then I sat on the floor of Michael's study and cried until I had nothing left. Not because I was weak, but because fighting shouldn't be this hard. Grieving shouldn't come with a battle plan. When did family become the thing you need protection from? Through all of this, the children were suffering in ways I couldn't always see. Ethan became quieter. More withdrawn. He'd always been thoughtful, but now he seemed to carry weights too heavy for an 8-year-old. One evening as I tucked him into bed, he whispered, Mummy, are we moving house? Uncle Marcus said we might. My blood went cold. He said that to you? Ethan nodded, his eyes wide with worry. He said the house belongs to Daddy's family now. He said you might not be able to keep it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Marcus's house and destroy him for putting fear into my child's heart. Instead, I pulled Ethan close and whispered, No, love. This house is ours. Yours, mine, Noah's, and Ava's. Uncle Marcus is wrong. Nobody is taking our home. But my throat tightened around the words because I wasn't entirely sure I could keep that promise. Noah started acting out at school. Pushing other children, refusing to follow instructions, crying without explanation. His teacher called me in for a meeting, her face sympathetic but concerned. He's grieving, I explained. His father just died. I understand, she said gently. But he told another child that his uncle said they'd have to leave their house soon. Is that true? My hands clenched into fists under the table. No, that's not true. But the damage was done. Marcus wasn't just coming for me, he was traumatizing my children with his threats. Ava, too young to understand death but old enough to feel the tension, started having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming for her daddy and I'd hold her in the dark, singing lullabies Michael used to sing, trying to be both mother and father and knowing I'd never be enough. How do you explain to your children that the people who should protect them are the ones causing harm? I documented it all. Every conversation the children reported. Every incident at school. Every nightmare, every tear, every moment their childhood was stolen by adults playing games with their future. Rachel said it might be useful evidence. But I didn't write it down for court. I wrote it down so I'd never forget. So that years from now when people asked why I fought so hard I could show them exactly what was at stake. Not property. Not money. My children's sense of safety. Their belief that the world could still be good. Rachel moved quickly. Within 2 weeks of our first meeting she'd filed for letters of administration on my behalf. The document was formal, legal, impersonal. But it felt like a shield. Rekhiel Michael, widow of Michael Anderson, deceased, seeks appointment as administrator of the deceased's estate, being the lawful spouse and mother to the deceased's 3 minor children. It went on, laying out the facts of our marriage, the properties, my legal rights as surviving spouse and guardian. She also filed a notice blocking any third-party claims on the estate without court approval. This prevents them from doing anything without your knowledge, Rachel explained. They can't sell, transfer, or refinance anything. It freezes the situation until the court makes a determination. How long will that take? She grimaced. Months possibly. Probate is slow even in simple cases. And this, she gestured at the growing file of documents, is not simple. The day after filing, Marcus called. What the hell have you done? He demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. I've exercised my legal rights. You've hired a lawyer. Against family. You left me no choice. He laughed bitterly. You're going to regret this, Rekhiel. You have no idea what you're starting. I didn't start this, Marcus. You did. The moment you decided I didn't deserve what Michael and I built together. He was my brother. And he was my husband. I shouted, surprising myself with the volume. He was my husband and he chose me. He married me. He built a life with me. And you don't get to erase me just because he's gone. Silence on the other end. Then, we'll see what the court says. He hung up. I stood there shaking, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone like it might offer answers. That night I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Just paced the house like a ghost in my own life, checking locks, looking out windows, waiting for something terrible to happen. Because when you fight back, there are always consequences. 2 weeks later, Marcus's solicitor sent a formal letter. Rachel called me into her office to read it together. Her expression told me everything before she even spoke. They're challenging your fitness to administer the estate, she said quietly. My vision blurred. On what grounds? She read from the letter. The applicant's current state of emotional distress and psychological instability makes her unsuitable for the responsibilities of estate administration. Given the substantial assets involved and the welfare of 3 minor children, it is in the best interests of all parties that administration be transferred to a blood relative with the necessary experience and emotional stability. Emotional distress. Psychological instability. They were using my grief as a weapon. Have you ever been punished for feeling what anyone would feel? For being human in a world that demands you be perfect? Can they do this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They can try, Rachel said. But they'll need evidence. Real evidence, not just assumptions. Have you seen a therapist? Been hospitalized? Had any documented mental health crises? Oh. I'm grieving. I'm sad. Sometimes I cry. But I'm not. I couldn't even say the word. Then we'll fight this, Rachel said firmly. But Rekhiel, I need you to be prepared. This is going to get nasty. They're going to try to paint you as unstable, as a bad mother, as incompetent. They'll twist every tear, every moment of sadness, every completely normal grief response into evidence against you. So what do? You live your life. You take care of your children. You keep documentation of everything. And you don't respond directly to any of them. Everything goes through me. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and studied my reflection. Dark circles under my eyes from months of poor sleep. Weight loss from grief stealing my appetite. Hair that needed cutting. Skin that looked gray in the fluorescent light. I looked like someone who was barely surviving. And they wanted to use that against me. I splashed cold water on my face and made a decision. I wouldn't give them any more ammunition. I stopped answering their calls. All of them. Marcus, Beverly, the cousins, the aunts who suddenly cared about Michael's children after years of minimal contact. Every call went to voicemail. Every text went unread. Every attempt at contact was documented and forwarded to Rachel. Silence became my new language. And God, they hated it. The voicemails started aggressive. Rekhiel, we need to talk. This is ridiculous. Then manipulative. We're just trying to help. Why are you shutting us out? Then threatening. This won't look good in court. You're isolating yourself. I saved every single one. At church, because I still went, needing the ritual even if I'd lost faith in prayers being answered. Marcus's sister Beverly approached me after service. You think ignoring us makes you better? She hissed, her voice low enough that others wouldn't hear. You're turning the family against itself. Michael would be ashamed. I wanted to shout that they'd started this. That they were the ones demanding I hand over everything. That they were using my dead husband's memory as a cudgel to beat me into submission. But what was the point? People believe what fits their comfort, not your truth. So I walked away without a word. She called after me, silence won't save you, Raquel. But she was wrong. Silence wasn't about being saved. It was about refusing to engage in a fight they'd designed for me to lose. When was the last time you realized that not every battle requires your voice? That sometimes the most powerful response is none at all? Not everyone was cruel. Mrs. Donnelly, my elderly neighbor who'd sat with the children the night Michael died, started bringing soup every Sunday. Just a little extra, she'd say, handing over containers of vegetable broth or chicken stew. I always make too much. She never asked about the legal battle. Never offered unwanted advice. Just showed up with food and kindness week after week. Claire, my manager at the design studio in Shoreditch where I'd returned to work part-time, was equally wonderful. Take what you need, she'd said on my first day back. If you need to leave early, leave. If you need to cry in the bathroom, cry. We'll make it work. She organized a fundraiser at the office. A bake sale and raffle that raised nearly £800 toward my legal fees. When she handed me the envelope of cash, I cried so hard I couldn't speak. You're not alone, she whispered, hugging me tight. I know it feels like it, but you're not. Father Thomas, the vicar at St. Giles, started checking in regularly. Not in a preachy way but in a genuinely concerned one. You don't owe anyone silence, he told me one afternoon over tea in the church office. Not even in the name of peace. Jesus flipped tables when people exploited others in his Father's house. Sometimes righteous anger is holy. I'd never thought of my anger as holy before. Tara, my best friend, was relentless in her support. She showed up unannounced with wine, with takeaway, with her presence when words failed. They're bastards, she'd say simply, no sugarcoating. And you're going to win. Because you have to. Because those babies need their mom and you're a damn good one. Why is it that sometimes strangers show you more kindness than blood relatives ever do? These small acts of support became my lifeline. They reminded me that not everyone was trying to destroy me. That goodness still existed even in the darkest season of my life. And slowly, so slowly I barely noticed it happening, I began to feel less alone. Going back to work was both terrifying and healing. The design studio was small. Just 12 of us crammed into a converted warehouse in Shoreditch, doing branding and digital design for small businesses and startups. I'd worked there for 3 years before Michael died, but coming back felt like returning to a foreign country. Everything looked the same desks, the same coffee machine that only worked if you hit it just right, the same motivational posters that were meant ironically but somehow worked anyway. But I was different. My first day back, everyone was carefully kind. Too kind, the way people are when they don't know what to say but want you to know they care. Welcome back, Raquel. So good to see you. If you need anything. I appreciated it even though it made me want to hide in the bathroom and cry. The work itself was meditative. Designing logos, choosing color palettes, arranging layouts. It required enough focus to quiet the constant spiral of worry in my head, but not so much that I felt overwhelmed. Each morning I'd walk across Southwark Bridge to the office, passing the same food stall where Ethan always begged for donuts. I started buying him one every Friday. A small ritual that made the world feel a bit less cruel. "Mummy's Friday donut," he'd shout when I came home, chocolate already smeared across his face before he'd finished half of it. Those small routines, work, the walk, the Friday donuts, became anchors. Proof that life could still contain joy, even when everything else was falling apart. One evening in late December, about 3 months after Michael's death, I came home from work to find an envelope on the doormat. No stamp. No return address. Just my name handwritten across the front. I knew immediately it was wrong. Inside was a single printed message. You can't hide forever. Family always wins. My knees buckled. I sank to the floor right there in the hallway, the paper trembling in my hands, heart hammering so hard I thought I might actually be having a heart attack. For a moment the walls of the house felt alive. Listening. Watching. The children were upstairs watching television. I could hear the theme song from whatever cartoon had captured their attention. Normal sounds from a world that suddenly felt very unsafe. I called Rachel immediately, my voice shaking so badly I could barely speak. Someone left a threatening letter. Under my door. Rachel, they know where I live. Of course they know where you live, she said, her voice calm, professional. Raquel, breathe. Are you in immediate danger? I don't know. I don't. Do you want me to call the police for you? Yes. No. I don't know. Will it help? She paused. Honestly, they'll log it. Maybe increase patrols in your area. But London police have bigger crimes to deal with. A threatening note with no explicit violence. They'll file a report, but it's unlikely they'll do much. So I'm on my own. No, Rachel said firmly. You're not alone. Forward me a photo of the letter. I'll add it to our file. This is evidence of harassment, Raquel. It helps our case. I did as she asked, then called the police anyway. An officer came 3 hours later. Young, tired-looking, clearly at the end of a long shift. He took my statement, photographed the letter, gave me a crime reference number. We'll keep an eye out, he said. Make sure your locks are good. Maybe install a camera if you can afford it. Then he left. And I was alone again. That night, after the children finally fell asleep, I stood in the back garden with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, staring up at the sky. The city lights swallowed most of the stars, but a few flickered stubbornly through the orange glow. I whispered to Michael's memory, I'm still trying, love. I'm still keeping them safe. The words felt hollow, like prayers shouted into a void. But I said them anyway. Because sometimes faith isn't about believing you'll be heard. It's about refusing to stop speaking. Something strange happened after that threatening letter. Word got around, I'm still not sure how. Maybe Mrs. Donnelly mentioned it to someone at the church. Maybe Claire said something at the community center. Maybe it was just that peculiar London grapevine where news travels faster than the Northern Line. But suddenly people started showing up. Not with pity. Not with platitudes. With practical support. Mr. Chen, who ran the Chinese restaurant on Rye Lane, dropped off containers of Marconi and cheese. You need strength, he said simply. Can't fight on an empty stomach. A woman from the School Parents Association I'd spoken to maybe twice offered to do school runs. I'm going anyway, she said with a shrug. What's 2 more kids? The local youth center offered free after-school care for Noah and Ava while I dealt with legal appointments. Father Thomas organized a quiet collection at church. Not announced, not made into a spectacle, just passed the word that Raquel Michael could use help with legal fees. They raised over £1,200. When Father Thomas brought me the envelope I couldn't speak. Just cried while he patted my shoulder awkwardly. Community isn't about blood, he said. It's about showing up. You've been alone long enough. Have you ever been surprised by kindness from unexpected places? Have you ever realized that family isn't always the people you're born to? Even the woman who worked at the Sainsbury's where I did my weekly shop started slipping extra items into my bags. Chocolate for the kids, tea bags, once a small bottle of wine with a note that said simply, hang in there. These acts of kindness didn't fix everything. They didn't make the legal battle disappear or bring Michael back. But they reminded me that I was fighting for something worth protecting. That there were still people who believed in justice, in fairness, in protecting widows and orphans not out of obligation but because it was right. Maybe that's what justice looks like sometimes. Not dramatic courtroom victories but small acts of solidarity that say, I see you. You matter. Keep going. Despite everything, maybe because of everything, the children found ways to be children. Ethan drew pictures constantly. Stick figures holding hands, houses with smoking chimneys, families that always included 5 people even though there were only 4 of us now. He taped them to the fridge, a growing gallery of crayon hope. One evening he presented me with a drawing of a woman in a cape. That's you, Mummy, he explained. You're a superhero. What's my superpower? I asked, voice tight. He thought seriously. Not giving up. I held him close and tried not to cry. 8 years old and already understanding more about strength than most adults ever would. Noah, in his own chaotic way, became my protector. When Beverly showed up unannounced one Saturday afternoon, I refused to answer, pretending we weren't home. He stood at the window and shouted, "Go away. Mummy says you're not allowed here." I should have scolded him for rudeness. Instead, I high-fived him when she finally left. "That's my boy," I whispered. Little Ava, barely 4, started talking to her father at night. I'd stand outside her door and hear her small voice in the darkness. "Daddy, Mummy's sad today. Can you help her?" "Daddy, Uncle Marcus is mean. Can you tell him to stop?" "Daddy, I miss you. Do you miss me?" It broke my heart every single time. But it also filled me with fierce determination. These children, these beautiful, resilient, heartbroken children, they deserved better than adults playing games with their future. They deserved a mother who fought. Even when fighting hurts. Even when winning felt impossible. One Saturday in early January, nearly 3 months after Michael's death, I made a decision. "We're going to Hyde Park," I announced at breakfast. The children looked at me like I'd suggested flying to the moon. "But it's cold," Noah protested. "So we'll wear coats." "But there's court stuff," Ethan began, already taking on too much adult worry. "The court stuff can wait," I interrupted. "Today we're being a family." We took the tube to Lancaster Gate, the children excited by the novelty. We hadn't done anything just for fun in months. Hyde Park in January is beautiful in a stark way. Bare trees against gray sky. The Serpentine reflecting clouds like a mirror. Frost still clinging to grass in shadowed spots. We walked along the paths, Ethan and Noah racing ahead while Ava toddled after pigeons, giggling every time they flew away. "Again," she'd shout. "Come back, birds." I bought them hot chocolate from a cart, watching them cup the warm paper cups in their small hands, chocolate mustaches forming instantly. For the first time in months I laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not a forced laugh. A real one, the kind that starts in your chest and bubbles up before you can stop it. We fed the ducks, despite the signs saying "not too sorry." Climbed on the memorial fountains. Played an impromptu game of tag that left us all breathless and pink-cheeked. For 2 hours we were just a family. Not a widow and orphans. Not plaintiffs in a legal battle. Just us. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to just exist? Without purpose, without agenda, without the weight of everything pressing down? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Marcus. "Let's stop this nonsense. Meet me at the old cafe on High Street tomorrow. One last talk." The good feeling drained away like water through a sieve. Reality, it seemed, had found us even in Hyde Park. That night, after the children were asleep, I called Rachel. "Marcus wants to meet. He says to talk, to stop all this." "Absolutely not," Rachel said immediately. "Anything he has to say can go through solicitors. Meeting him privately is—" "I know," I interrupted. "I know what you're going to say. But maybe he's actually ready to be reasonable. Maybe—" "Wreck heel." Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. "He's not looking for resolution. He's looking for leverage. He wants to meet without witnesses, without documentation, so he can say you agreed to something you didn't, or pressure you in ways he can later deny." "But what if I record it? What if he manipulates you while you're grieving and exhausted and desperate for this to end? What if he says something that makes you break down and then uses your emotional state as more evidence that you're unstable?" I sat in silence, phone pressed to my ear, hating that she was right. "You've come this far," Rachel continued. "Don't give him an opening now. If he wants to talk, it's in a mediation room with both solicitors present. Not in some cafe where he controls the narrative." "I'll think about it," I said. "Please don't," Rachel replied. "But I know I can't stop you." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at Marcus's text. Part of me wanted to go. To look him in the eye. To hear what he had to say without lawyers translating everything into legal language. To tell him directly what he'd put me through. What he'd put the children through. But another part, the part that had learned slowly and painfully that some people don't deserve your presence, knew Rachel was right. So, sometimes you need to face the thing that scares you. Not because it's smart, but because you need to prove to yourself that you can. Sunday morning. The cafe on Peckham High Street. I went against every piece of advice I'd been given. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was necessary. I'm still not sure. The cafe was almost empty. Too early for the brunch crowd, too late for the churchgoers. It smelled like burnt espresso and desperation, the kind of place that's seen 1,000 difficult conversations and absorbed them into its walls. Marcus sat by the window, backlit by weak winter sun. He looked older than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing him clearly for the first time. He didn't stand when I arrived. Didn't smile. Just gestured to the empty chair across from him. "You came," he said. "You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would. You've become difficult to reach. My solicitor handles communication now." He made a dismissive sound. "That's exactly what I want to talk about. This has gone too far, Rekhiel. Lawyers. Court filings. Threats. It's not what Michael would have wanted. Isn't it interesting how people invoke the dead to support whatever argument suits them?" "Don't tell me what Michael would have wanted," I said quietly. "You don't get to use him as a shield. He was my brother. And he was my husband. For 8 years. Every morning, every night, every decision. You saw him at holidays and family gatherings. I saw him in every unguarded moment. So don't tell me you knew him better." Marcus leaned back, studying me. "You've changed." "I had to. You used to be softer. Agreeable. I used to be a lot of things. Then my husband died and his family tried to steal everything we built. That changes a person." He had the audacity to look offended. "Steal? We're trying to protect." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't insult my intelligence. You want the properties. You want control. You want to make sure that if I remarry someday, not that it's any of your business, no other man benefits from Michael's work. As if I didn't work too. As if I wasn't his partner in everything. You're still young. You don't understand how these things." "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice harder now. "You think because I'm a woman, because I'm grieving, because I once let you order for me at restaurants and nodded along when you talked about investments I supposedly wouldn't understand, you think that makes me weak. Controllable. That's not. You broke into my safe, Marcus. You showed up at my house unannounced, repeatedly. You spoke to my children about losing their home. You filed court documents calling me mentally unstable. You left a threatening letter under my door, or had someone do it for you." His face went carefully blank. "I don't know anything about a letter." "Of course you don't." We sat in silence. Around us, the cafe hummed with other people's normal Sunday mornings. A couple sharing pastries. A man reading the paper. An elderly woman with a tiny dog in her handbag. Normal life continuing despite everything. "You think you can fight me forever?" Marcus finally asked. "The system doesn't favor women like you." Something crystallized in that moment. Not anger. Something colder. Clear. "Then I'll change the system," I said quietly. He laughed, but there was fear behind it. Real fear. Because he'd realized what I'd just figured out myself. I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. "You'll regret this," he said. I stood up, looked him straight in the eye and replied, "I already did. When I trusted you." Then I walked out without looking back. The air outside was sharp and cold, the kind that stings your lungs and wakes you up. I pulled out my phone and texted Rachel. "I met with him. You were right. He hasn't changed. We keep fighting." Her response came immediately. "Was worried. But proud. Also have good news. Call me." I called Rachel from the street, too anxious to wait until I got home. "The judge ruled," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Temporary guardianship and financial control go to you until the children come of age." For a moment I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process the words. "Rachel? Are you there?" "We won." My voice came out as a whisper. "It's temporary. The full probate still needs to work through the system. But yes. You have legal authority over the estate. Marcus can't touch anything without your approval." Tears ran down my face before I even realized I was crying. I stood on Peckham High Street, phone pressed to my ear, crying while people walked past giving me concerned looks. "Thank you," I managed. "Rachel, thank you. You did this," she said firmly. "Not me." "By refusing to stay quiet. By documenting everything. By standing up when everyone expected you to fall down. This is your victory, Rekhiel." I walked home in a daze. The streets looked different somehow, brighter, less threatening, possible. When I got home, the children were watching television, sprawled across the sofa in their pajamas even though it was nearly noon. I knelt down in front of them. "Can I tell you something?" They looked at me with curious faces. Remember how Uncle Marcus said we might have to move? How he said the house belonged to other people? Ethan nodded solemnly. He was wrong. The judge said so. This house is ours. Yours and mine. Nobody can take it from us. Forever. Ava asked. Forever, I confirmed. Noah cheered. Ava clapped. Ethan just hugged me tight and I felt his small body relax in a way it hadn't in months. Can we have pancakes to celebrate? Noah asked, already moving on with the beautiful resilience of childhood. We can have anything you want, I laughed. We did it. We actually did it. Not because I was stronger than them. Not because I was smarter or richer or had better lawyers. But because I refused to stop speaking. Refused to accept that grief made me less than I was. Refused to let them erase me from my own story. When the judge's final ruling came through, not the temporary order but the full determination, I didn't celebrate right away. Justice, I learned, rarely feels like fireworks. It's quieter. Like a storm that's finally blown past, leaving you standing among the wreckage, still trembling, but alive. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Rachel called while I was at work, finishing designs for a client's website. Everything's settled, she said. Full letters of administration granted. You have complete control of the estate until the children reach majority. Marcus and his solicitors can't challenge it again without extraordinary new evidence, which they won't find because it doesn't exist. I saved my work file, closed my laptop, walked to the small bathroom in the back of the office and locked the door. Then I let myself fall apart, not from sadness, from relief so profound it felt physical. Like weight I'd been carrying for months suddenly lifted, and my body didn't know how to function without it. I cried until my face was blotchy and my eyes swollen. Then I washed my face, fixed my makeup as best I could and went back to my desk. Claire took one look at me and asked, "Good news or bad?" "Good," I managed. She hugged me right there in the middle of the office and I didn't even care that everyone was watching. That evening I told the children properly. We sat together on the sofa, the same sofa where Michael used to fall asleep with his laptop, and I explained in simple terms what the judge had decided. "So nobody can take our house?" Ethan asked, needing to be absolutely sure. "Nobody," I confirmed. "Not even Uncle Marcus?" "Not even him." Noah did a victory dance that involved far too much hip wiggling for a 6-year-old. Ava copied him because Ava copied everything Noah did. And Ethan, serious, worried Ethan who'd carried so much fear for so long, smiled. Really smiled. Have you ever seen the moment someone you love stops being afraid? Have you ever been the reason they could breathe again? That night, after they were asleep, I poured myself a glass of the wine Father Thomas had given me months ago. Good wine, saved for a moment worth celebrating. I stood by the kitchen window, looking out at our small garden with its overgrown hedges we kept meaning to trim, and whispered to Michael's memory. "We did it, love. They tried but we won." The relief didn't feel triumphant. It felt earned. Hard-won. Paid for in sleepless nights and tears and moments when I'd wanted to give up but couldn't. This was peace. Not perfect. Not without scars. But real. But peace, I discovered, has a strange way of asking for more. Once I'd caught my breath, once the immediate battle was over, a new thought started growing inside me. If this happened to me, educated, English-speaking with access to legal advice, how many other women are trapped in silence? I began to read everything I could find about widows' rights in the UK. Articles about intestacy laws. Support forums where women shared stories that sounded horrifyingly familiar. Have you ever realized too late that your pain was part of a bigger pattern? That what they told you was just family business was actually injustice hiding behind tradition? My husband died 6 months ago. His brothers took the car keys and won't give them back. They're pressuring me to sell our house. They say I can't manage it alone. His family emptied our joint account before I could access it. The bank says there's nothing they can do. They told me if I remarry I lose everything. Is that true? Different women. Different cities. Different circumstances. But the same story underneath. Widow becomes invisible. Family becomes predator. Grief becomes weakness to exploit. It wasn't just me. There were dozens. Hundreds maybe. Different accents, different postcodes, different details. But the same line in every story. We only want what's fair. And somehow fair always meant taking everything from her. I started responding to posts in the forums sharing what I'd learned. Get a solicitor immediately. Document everything. You have rights. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Intestacy law favors the spouse. They're banking on you not knowing that. Call this legal aid number. They helped me. Don't give up. Each message I sent felt like lighting a small candle in someone else's darkness. And slowly a thought took shape. What if there was a better way to do this? What if instead of responding individually to women already in crisis, we created something that could help them earlier? Something that could prevent this from happening in the first place. The first time I told my story publicly was at a small community meeting in Brixton. The local council had organized a forum on women's rights and financial literacy. Tara saw the poster and texted me, "You should speak. People need to hear this." My first instinct was no. Absolutely not. I wasn't a public speaker. I was just a widow trying to survive. But Tara was relentless. "You fought them and won. How many women could you help by sharing that?" So I agreed. Against every instinct telling me to stay small, stay quiet, stay safe. The meeting was in a community center basement that smelled like instant coffee and old carpet. Maybe 40 people attended. Mostly women, a few men, various ages and backgrounds. I sat in the back row, palms sweating, heart hammering, reconsidering everything. Then the moderator introduced me. "Our next speaker is Rekhil Michael, a local mother who successfully fought for her rights after her husband's death." I walked to the front on shaking legs. For a moment I just stood there looking at all those faces and almost couldn't speak. Then I saw a woman in the third row, maybe late 20s, head wrapped in a beautiful purple scarf, eyes already glistening with tears like she knew what I was about to say that I spoke to her. "My name is Rekhil. 6 months ago my husband died suddenly. And the day after his funeral his family tried to take everything we'd built together. My voice shook at first. But as I continued, telling them about Marcus, about the threats, about the legal battle, about standing up when everything told me to fall down, the shaking stopped. The words poured out. Raw. Honest. Unpolished, that I didn't make myself sound heroic. I told them about the fear, the doubt, the nights I wanted to quit. The times I thought maybe they were right, maybe I couldn't do this alone. But I learned something, I said, looking around the room now. Grief doesn't make you incompetent. Sadness doesn't make you less intelligent. Being a woman doesn't make you less entitled to what's yours. They tried to convince me otherwise. And for a while I almost believed them. Heads nodded. Someone murmured agreement. If this is happening to you, if someone is using your loss against you, making you feel small, telling you to be grateful for whatever scraps they decide to leave you, I need you to know. You have rights. Legal rights that don't disappear because you're sad or female or grieving. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to keep what's yours." When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then everyone. But what I remember most wasn't the applause that it was afterward. When that woman in the purple scarf approached me, tears streaming down her face, she hugged me so tightly I thought I'd fall apart again. "You just told my story," she whispered. "I thought I was the only one. I thought I was going crazy. Thank you. Thank you. Have you ever spoken your truth and watched someone else recognize themselves in it? Have you ever realized your pain could be someone else's roadmap out?" We talked for nearly an hour after everyone else left. Her name was Amina. Her husband had died 8 months ago in Manchester. His brothers were pressuring her to sign over their flat. "I didn't know I could say no," she told me. "They made it sound like I had no choice." I gave her Rachel's contact information and the names of legal aid organizations. "You have choices," I told her firmly. "Don't let them take that from you." She hugged me again before leaving. "I'm going to fight," she said like she was making a vow. "Because of you, I'm going to fight." That night, walking home through Brixton's familiar streets, I felt taller than I had in months. Not because of applause or recognition, but because I'd turned my pain into purpose. Because one woman now knew she wasn't alone. Maybe that's what power really is. Not control or domination or getting your way. Maybe it's telling the truth loud enough that someone else finds theirs. The next week, Claire helped me design a simple website that we called it We Rise Legal Aid. Nothing fancy. Just a single page with information about widows' rights, inheritance law, probate processes. Links to legal aid organizations. A contact form for women who needed advice. We launched it on a Wednesday. By Friday, the contact form had 17 messages. By the end of the month, nearly 60. Each message was a variation of the same story. My husband died. His family is pressuring me. They say the house isn't really mine. They want me to sign papers I don't understand. I have children. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Please help. I couldn't help everyone. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't have unlimited resources. But I could connect them to people who could help. I could share what I'd learned. I could tell them they weren't alone. Tara helped me organize a monthly support meeting at her church in Camberwell. The first meeting I expected maybe 5 women. 23 showed up. We sat in a circle in the church basement. Women of every age, every background, every circumstance. Different stories, same pain. One by one they shared. His brothers changed the locks on our house while I was at the hospital. They told me I'm not really family because we'd only been married 3 years. They're using my grief against me, saying I'm too emotional to make decisions. They threatened to call social services, say I'm an unfit mother if I don't cooperate. Story made me angrier. Not at the women but at the system that allowed this to happen. At the culture that taught men they had more right to dead men's estates than living wives. At the silence that let predatory families operate without consequence. You're not alone, I told them. None of us are anymore. And together we're going to make sure this stops. When was the last time you felt truly seen by people who understood without explanation? When did you last find your tribe? We started sharing resources. One woman worked at a law firm. She offered to review documents for free. Another had experience with benefit systems. She helped others navigate financial support. A retired teacher offered tutoring for the children of women who couldn't afford paid help. We Rise became more than a website. It became a community. A lifeline. Proof that women supporting women could create change that systems refused to. Marcus tried to appeal the ruling one more time. His solicitor filed paperwork claiming new evidence had emerged proving I was financially irresponsible and therefore unsuitable to manage the children's inheritance. The evidence? A credit card statement showing I'd spent £1,200 on legal fees. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. They're desperate, Rachel said when she called to tell me. This is grasping at straws. The court will dismiss it. He was right. The court dismissed it within a week, with a strongly worded statement suggesting further frivolous appeals might result in costs being awarded against Marcus personally. That was the end. Finally. Officially. A week later, I saw him outside the courthouse after the final dismissal hearing. He was leaving as I was arriving for a different matter. He stopped me in the car park. For a moment we just stood there, the March wind cold between us. I never meant to hurt you, he said. And maybe he even believed it. I looked at him, really looked at him. Not with anger anymore. Just with a kind of tired clarity. You didn't just try to hurt me, I said quietly. You tried to erase me. You tried to convince me that without Michael I was nothing. That being his widow made me less than his brother. That my grief meant I deserved to lose everything we built together. He opened his mouth to respond, but I continued. You terrorized my children. You made them afraid of losing their home. You called me unstable in legal documents. You broke into my house. You or someone working for you left threatening letters. I didn't. It doesn't matter now, I interrupted. It's over. You lost. Not because I was stronger or smarter or had better lawyers, but because I was right. And eventually that mattered. Wreck heel. I hope you think about this, I said, turning to leave. I hope someday you look at your own wife or sister or daughter and imagine someone treating them the way you treated me. And I hope it keeps you up at night. Then I walked away. No screaming. No dramatic confrontation. Just the soft sound of my shoes on concrete and the steady beat of my own heart. Sometimes the loudest revenge is peace. The clearest victory is walking away intact. I never saw Marcus again. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he told people I'd become difficult after Michael's death, that grief had changed me. He was right about that last part. Grief had changed me. Just not in the way he thought. It had made me stronger. Clearer. Less willing to accept injustice just to keep the peace. People often ask me if I've forgiven him. If I've forgiven all of them. Marcus, his sisters, the cousins who joined in, the relatives who stood silent while it happened. The answer is complicated. I have forgiven them. But not in the way people expect. Forgiveness to me isn't letting someone off the hook. It's not saying what they did was okay. It's not reconciling or pretending it didn't happen. Forgiveness is setting yourself free from the chain that keeps you angry. It's saying what you did was wrong. It hurt me and my children. But I refuse to carry the weight of your actions for the rest of my life. Have you ever forgiven someone not because they deserved it, but because you refuse to carry their weight anymore? I forgive Marcus for being who he is. A man who values property over people, control over compassion, tradition over truth. I forgive his family for being complicit, for choosing sides, for believing that blood relation gives them rights over the woman their brother chose to build a life with. But I'll never forget. Because forgetting is how injustice hides. Forgetting is how the same stories repeat across generations. Forgetting is how powerful people continue to exploit vulnerable ones. So I remember. I document. I share. I teach. Not out of bitterness. Not out of revenge. But out of determination that what happened to me happens to fewer women in the future. 6 months after the final ruling, I was invited to run a workshop at the council's equality office in Southwark. The room was small, maybe 30 chairs arranged in a circle. A mixed audience. Young mothers, widows, students studying social work, even a few men who looked genuinely interested in learning. I stood at the front, no longer shaking like I had at that first community meeting. I'm not a lawyer, I began. I'm not an expert in inheritance law or probate or any of the technical things we're going to discuss today. I'm just a woman who refused to disappear. I told them my story, the shorter version now, refined through repetition but still honest. Still raw where it needed to be. Then I gave them practical information. What intestacy laws actually say. Why writing a will matters, God does it matter. What widows are legally entitled to. How to document threats and pressure. Where to find free legal advice. What questions to ask solicitors. How to protect yourself before crisis hits. But more than facts and laws, I tried to give them something else. Permission. You are allowed to say no, I told them. Even to family. Especially to family. You are allowed to ask questions. To demand documentation. To insist on transparency. You are allowed to keep what's yours. You are allowed to grieve and still be competent. To be sad and still be strong. To be a woman and still be taken seriously. Every head nodded. Every pair of eyes carried a story of its own. A young woman raised her hand. What if they say you're being selfish? What if they say you're tearing the family apart? Then they're telling you who they are, I replied. People who call you selfish for protecting yourself are usually people who benefit from your sacrifice. And families that break because someone says, no, we're already broken. You're just refusing to keep pretending. An older woman, maybe 60, spoke up. I wish I'd heard this 30 years ago. When my husband died, I let his brothers take everything. I thought that's what good wives did. I thought I was honoring his memory by not fighting. It's not too late, I told her gently. Even if the legal window has closed, it's not too late to tell your story. To warn your daughters. To make sure they don't repeat your silence. She nodded, tears in her eyes. After the workshop, people lingered. Asking questions, sharing stories, exchanging contact information. One young mother approached me with her baby on her hip. My husband's not dead, she said quickly. But we're going to make a will this week. Because of you. Because I never want to be in that position. Good, I told her firmly. Protect yourself now. Don't wait for tragedy to force you. That's the thing about sharing your pain publicly. You can't undo what happened to you. But you can maybe prevent it from happening to someone else. And somehow that makes the pain mean something. It's been 3 years now since Michael died. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear his keys at the door, the familiar sound of his laughter echoing down the hallway, the smell of his cologne lingering in the bathroom after his morning shower. Grief, I've learned, doesn't vanish. It just learns to breathe beside you. Some days it's a whisper. Some days it's a shout. But it's always there, part of the landscape of your life. The children are older. Growing in ways that break my heart and make me proud simultaneously. Ethan is 11 now, more thoughtful than his years. He asks impossible questions about death and justice and why people hurt each other. He's the one who remembers Michael most clearly, tells stories about when Daddy and I, that make Noah and Ava jealous because their memories are fuzzier, more like photographs than films. He wants to be a lawyer when he grows up. Like Rachel, he says, to help people like Mummy. Noah is 9, still wild, still stubborn, still possessing his father's inability to sit still for more than 10 minutes. But he's also developed this fierce protective streak. When a boy at school made fun of him for not having a dad, Noah punched him. I should have been more upset about the violence. But honestly, I understood. Next time, use words, I told him, trying to be responsible. But I get it. I wanted to punch people too sometimes. He grinned. Did you? No. But I wanted to. That's the important part. Feeling angry is okay. How we handle it matters. And Ava. Little Ava, who's not so little anymore, 7 years old and pure sunshine even after everything. She still climbs into my bed on stormy nights, but now she's the one comforting me when I'm sad. It's okay, Mummy, she'll whisper, patting my hair. Daddy's watching. He told me in my dream. I don't know if I believe in an afterlife. But I believe in the comfort it gives my daughter, so I don't correct her. We moved last year. Not because we had to, but because we wanted to. The Peckham house had too many ghosts. Too many memories, both beautiful and painful. Every room whispered stories. First steps, birthday parties, the morning Michael died, the fight with Marcus in the dining room. We needed a space that was ours. Not the life before, but the life after. We found a smaller terraced house in South London in a quiet street near Dulwich. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. Every brick, every window, every quiet morning cup of tea by the kitchen window purchased with money I earned and decisions I made. The rental property, the Surrey Quays flat that Marcus tried so hard to control, continues to bring in income that goes into trust accounts for the children's education. Managed by me. Documented and transparent and completely above board. We kept Michael's life insurance for emergencies and future needs. I make sure the children know that every opportunity they have, every school trip, every music lesson, every book they want, comes partially from their father's foresight in protecting them. His memory isn't erased by his family's cruelty. I won't let them take that from him or from us. Sometimes I stand in our new kitchen, smaller than the old one, with a window that overlooks a tiny garden where Noah has planted tomatoes that will probably never grow, and think about how far we've come. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually maybe. That's how I feel when I think of the woman who faced a family full of lawyers with nothing but a notebook, a trembling voice, and the truth. She was terrified. But she stood anyway. We Rise has grown beyond anything I imagined. What started as a simple website is now a registered charity. Small, under-resourced, run mostly by volunteers, but real. Making actual change. We've helped nearly 80 women reclaim what was stolen from them. Some cried through the first call. Others whispered, I thought I was alone. They aren't. None of us are anymore. We offer free initial legal consultations with volunteer solicitors. Support groups in London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Leeds. A 24-hour helpline for women in crisis. Educational workshops on inheritance rights. Advocacy for policy changes around intestacy laws. A network of women who've survived similar battles and can offer peer support. Last month, we were invited to submit testimony to a parliamentary committee reviewing probate and inheritance laws. I sat in a room full of MPs and lawyers and policy experts, and I told them about Michael, about Marcus, about the women I'd met through We Rise. The law as written is inadequate, I told them. It assumes families act in good faith. It assumes grief doesn't make people vulnerable to manipulation. It assumes widows have the resources, knowledge, and emotional capacity to navigate complex legal systems while mourning. These assumptions are wrong. And women are paying the price. I don't know if anything will change. Government moves slowly and change moves slower. But I spoke. I was heard. And that matters. Once, about a year ago, Marcus sent a message through a mutual acquaintance. Just 4 words, "You've made your point." I didn't reply. Because it was never about proving a point. It was never about winning some argument or getting revenge or making him admit he was wrong. It was about proving my existence. It was about standing in the space I'd earned and refusing to be moved. It was about teaching my children, my daughter especially, that being kind doesn't mean being small. That grief doesn't equal incompetence. That saying no to family doesn't make you a bad person. When did we decide that women who stand up for themselves are difficult? When did we start calling strength, aggressive, and boundaries selfish? I don't hate Marcus. I don't think about him much at all anymore, honestly. He's a cautionary tale. A lesson in what not to be. But he's not the villain of my story. Not really. The real villains were the systems that allowed him to try. The cultural assumptions that told him he had more right to his dead brother's property than his living wife. The legal complexities that make inheritance a battlefield instead of a transition. The silence that lets these stories repeat across generations. Those are the real enemies. And those are what I'm fighting now. Some evenings after the kids fall asleep, I light a candle by the window and sit in the quiet. Not praying exactly. Just acknowledging. Remembering. Promising. I whisper to Michael's memory. I kept them safe, love. Like you asked. Like I promised. They're growing up strong and kind and brave. Noah has your stubbornness. Ethan has your thoughtfulness. Ava has your joy. I kept our promises too. The house, the future, the stability. It wasn't easy. God, it wasn't easy. But I did it. I hope you're proud. I hope wherever you are, if you're anywhere, you can see what we've built from the ashes. I don't know if he hears me. I don't know if anyone does. But it doesn't matter. The speaking is the point, not the hearing. Do you ever talk to people you've lost? Not because you think they'll answer, but because you need to say the words anyway? I've started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. Nothing serious yet. Tara set me up with a friend of her husband's. Nice man, accountant, likes hiking. We've been on 3 dates. He knows I'm a widow, knows about the children, knows about We Rise. You're remarkable, he said on our last date. I laughed. I'm just a woman who refused to be erased. Exactly, he said. Remarkable. I don't know if it'll go anywhere. I'm not sure I'm ready for anywhere yet. But the possibility exists. The future exists. Life continues despite everything. And that feels like its own kind of victory. If you're watching this, listening to my story, reading these words, whatever format this reaches you in, I need you to hear something. You don't owe them your quiet. I don't care who they are. Family. In-laws. Society. Tradition. Expectations. If someone ever tries to silence you, if they tell you you're too emotional, too difficult, too much, if they use your grief against you, if they try to take what's yours and call it protection, you don't owe them your quiet. You owe yourself your freedom. Because when one woman stands, others see it's possible. When one voice rises, silence loses its power. When one story is told, the world shifts just a little. Just enough. I'm not special. I'm not uniquely brave or strong or capable. I'm just a woman who got tired of being small. Who decided that surviving wasn't enough. I wanted to live. And if I can do it, exhausted, grieving, terrified with 3 kids and no safety net, then so can you. Whatever you're facing. Whatever battle you're fighting. Whatever voice is telling you to give up, be quiet, accept less than you deserve. Look at me. You can. We can. We rise. Today is Tuesday day. Ordinary Tuesday day in South London. Rain taps against the kitchen window in that soft, rhythmic way only London rain can. Ethan is doing homework at the dining table, tongue sticking out in concentration the way Michael's used to when he focused. Noah is building something chaotic with Lego in the living room, pieces scattered everywhere, creative destruction in progress. Ava is drawing at the coffee table, stick figures holding hands. Always stick figures. Always holding hands. I'm making dinner. Nothing fancy. Pasta with sauce from a jar because it's Thursday and we're all tired. This is life now. Not perfect. Not what I planned. But ours. The doorbell doesn't ring with threats anymore. The phone doesn't carry bad news. The mailbox doesn't hold letters designed to frighten. We're just living. Quietly. Safely. Together. We Rise continues. The work continues. The fight for other women continues. But tonight I'm just a mother making dinner for her children. A widow who survived. A woman who refused to disappear. And that ordinary, quiet, beautifully mundane existence. That's the real victory. If you've ever been pushed into silence, remember this. They only win when you stop speaking. If you've ever been told you're too emotional, too difficult, too much, remember, the right people will never find you overwhelming. They'll find you inspiring. If you've ever been broken, if you've ever been told you can't, look at me. Look at my children. Look at what we built from grief and determination and refusal to accept less than we deserved. You can do this. Whatever this is for you. You are stronger than you know. Braver than you feel. More capable than anyone who tries to diminish you will admit. My name is Rekhil Michael. I'm a mother. A widow. A survivor. An advocate. I run We Rise Legal Aid, helping women reclaim their rights after loss. I'm 34 years old, living in South London with 3 incredible children who remind me every day why the fight mattered. And I will never, never let anyone write me out of my own story again. Neither should you. We rise. Together. Always. If you or someone you know is facing inheritance disputes, family pressure after bereavement, or threats related to property and finances, you have rights. You have options. You have support. Don't fight alone. Don't suffer in silence. Don't let them convince you that grief makes you less than you are. Reach out. Speak up. Stand firm. Because you matter. Your children matter. Your future matters. And somewhere there's another woman like me who fought and won, waiting to tell you. You got this. We've got you. We rise. Hit the subscribe button, like and comment your experiences.